welcome to the Pandemic Pinup Happy Hour. It is yet again Sunday, and I'm here making drinks for you guys. Today's theme is post-Derby party. Yesterday was the Kentucky Derby, and it was a lot of fun. I don't know if anyone out there watches it or is interested. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I do enjoy the drinks. I wanted to come up with a few cocktails that I felt were in the Derby spirit because I sometimes feel like when the Kentucky Derby gets mentioned, everybody's heard about the mint julep, and that's kind of where the cocktail selection ends. So I know there's other official cocktails for the Derby, but I wanted to make my own because that's just what I do. So we'll be making three cocktails per usual, and they all have a little bit, well, not a little, a lot of stuff behind them, and I'm going to share that with you. And hopefully one of these will inspire you to do a little deep dive on the internet and learn some history, because I did it myself. I find it very interesting, but I haven't memorized it enough to fully share it with you on today's class. So hopefully it just inspires you to make the drink and then go learn about things. But the first cocktail we're going to make, I'm calling the Derby 13. And I'm calling it that because it is in honor of the first black jockeys in the inaugural Kentucky Derby. So I figured what better whiskey to use for this cocktail than Uncle Nearest. The Kentucky Derby is sponsored by, or its official whiskey is Woodford Reserve. However, Uncle Nearest is also an amazing whiskey, and it just seemed really fitting for the cocktail. So in the inaugural race of the Kentucky Derby, there were 15 jockeys, 13 of whom were black. And that is where I get the name, the Derby 13. But it's really interesting history. It started off being primarily black riders, and then they were doing really well, so other people didn't want them in the Derby. And racism, as it does, found its way into the Derby, and they were eventually banned in like the early 1900s. And many of them left and were able to travel abroad and had very successful careers in other countries. And I want to say the first black jockey since then was in like a couple years ago, maybe. I think it was like 2013, 2015, something like that. But it's a very interesting history. I found it to be surprising, but also just a really interesting read. So in honor of that, I wanted to make something that I felt just kind of felt classy and like a really good base to start your day off with, but strong, because I feel like those Kentucky Derby 13 were very strong. They were probably strong-minded, strong-willed, strong athletes. So I just felt like that was a good idea. So I kind of took a Manhattan, kind of, and a whiskey Coke, kind of, and some tradition that we do a lot in the South, where we put peanuts in Coke. I don't know if y'all have ever heard that, but it's this weird little thing. You just put a bunch of peanuts in your Coca-Cola, and it's super tasty. So I kind of put those three concepts together in a cocktail. So what we'll be needing is a mixing glass, not a cocktail shaker. And I'm going to be using an ounce and a half of Uncle Nearest. Now, I did try this with the other one that has the purple label. It's like 1856, I think. This one is 1884. I enjoyed the pairing much more with this particular whiskey. It was nice with both, but there was just something about the balance with this particular one that I chose this one for the cocktail. Feel free to experiment with the whiskey of your choice or the Uncle Nearest of your choice. So an ounce and a half directly to my mixing glass. Now, the Manhattan is a cocktail that's usually whiskey and vermouth and bitters. And it's one of my favorite whiskey cocktails. However, the lesser known Black Manhattan has, instead of vermouth, a bitter Amaro. So Amari are different liqueurs from different parts of the world. A lot of the more known ones are from Germany or Italy. And they come in a wide variety of flavor profiles, from citrus to herbal to like caramels and chocolates. But there's a certain category of them, or not categories, a group of them that are well known, such as like Chinar, Braulio, Averna, Montenegro, that are all darker in color. They tend to be a little richer in flavor. You get a lot of those herbal notes, those dark like coffee, chocolate type of vibes. And I love Black Manhattans. I don't think they get talked about enough. I think a lot of people just aren't aware that they exist. So if you were making just a Black Manhattan, you would use whatever your whiskey is, and then you would sub out the vermouth in the Manhattan for a black Amari. or dark Amari. And then you use bitters of your choice. So I'm just taking the inspiration of combining whiskey with the Black Amaro, and I'm going to just use 1/4 of an ounce, not a whole lot, just a little bit. Because again, I wanted this to be the beginning of my Derby day, not the end, which my husband has this kind of finality to it. I can drink multiples, but there's something about that flavor profile that is just deep, rich, and just a great way to end the night. So I kind of wanted to dial it back just a tiny bit. So in here, whiskey, Amari, and now comes the Coke. So you can do this with Pepsi, you can do it with Dr. Pepper. I chose Coca-Cola because the peanut and Coke tradition is traditionally done with Coca-Cola. So I'm going to use 1 ounce of Coca-Cola. And if you can see my screen well enough, you might notice this is an off-brand Coca-Cola. And that's just because that's what I usually have in my house. I have the HEB brand of Coca-Cola. So, be adding some ice to my mixing ones. You're wondering where the peanuts are. So if you want to try the peanut and Coke thing, the best way to do it is to get one of those classic glass bottles and then just get a bag of lightly salted shelled peanuts and then just put a handful of them in your, you take a little sip of Coke, put a handful of them in there, stuff them in the bottle, and they kind of like sit in there and marinate. And so your Coke has like some salt added to it, and then it gets a little bit of nuttiness, but the peanuts are the tasty bit. They soak up all this flavor, and then you get this like really crunchy, delicious treat at the end of your cocktail. So considering that they're more of like an add-in, I wanted to use them as the garnish for the Derby 13. So I have this glass here. It's kind of hard to see because I've got white on white today. There we go. So it's got this layer of crushed salted peanuts. So the peanuts that I had were lightly roasted and lightly salted, not salty enough for my taste for the contrast of the cocktail. So I crushed them up, chopped them up really fine, and then I added a little pinch of salt when I made the little room. So with the cocktail ready, I'm going to just pour that into my glass. And it's that simple. Manhattan meets Whiskey Coke meets the South in honor of the Derby 13. So this is Derby 13. Cheers. The beauty, oh, that's so good. The beauty of doing all these cocktail classes without an audience is that someone has to drink these, and it's usually me. So that is the Derby 13. Moving forward, as I said, the mint julep is probably the most well-known cocktail when it comes to conversations about the Kentucky Derby. While it is a fantastic cocktail, and there are many people that have done tons of variations, I'm a little more partial to the whiskey smash. So every week before I do these classes, like today's Sunday, so Monday earlier this week, I put out a shopping list and a prep list for people who would like to follow along or want to prepare and then watch the video and then make them later. So originally, this cocktail is a peach sweet tea with peach drink. But I realized that even though I thought about it and it's a great idea and I've had it and it's delicious, peaches are not in season for another week or two, at least where I am. So if you have access to peaches, please feel free, go for it. I could not find any and I didn't want to use frozen peaches. So you will follow this exact same recipe. I'm going to give you the peach specifications and then I'm going to show you how I just blend because I couldn't find any of the ingredients that I told all of you guys to go and get. So again, originally this cocktail is supposed to be peach and Thai basil. So Thai basil is phenomenal. I love it. If you haven't had it, get in on that game. It is so tasty. It's like mint meets basil meets this extra depth of herbal that's just very unique. Plus it's got these pretty like purple tones to the leaves. It's just a very hearty basil. So I could not find Thai basil. I noticed it in the store, hence the recipe. And then after I bought it, played around with it, I went back to the store and everybody has been out of it consistently for the last week and a half. So to fix that, I'm using basil and mint. That's as close as you can get without having Thai basil. So I'm calling this cocktail the Maiden Race. The Maiden Race is a race that happens on the Derby weekend where all of the horses that have yet to run or have yet to win a race each other. And it's usually younger horses. So that's where I'm getting this. This is kind of like a different version of a mint julep. It's never won any awards, but I'm hoping it wins a place in y'all's hearts for the Kentucky Derby race maybe next year, because we're doing this after the Kentucky Derby. So we're going to be using mint and basil instead of Thai basil as the demo, but for the original recipe, it's just Thai basil. And then peaches, like I said, were nowhere to be found. So I picked up gooseberries, also known as, I always know the name in Spanish, it's fruta de amor, but they have this little like package leaf that goes around it. Very similar to a tomatillo. They're really bright and tart and citrusy and juicy and fruity. They're really, really pretty. So I'm doing a basil mint gooseberry whiskey. But the original Maiden Race is a peach Thai basil tea. So to make this, if you were doing the original, you would use 4 Thai basil leaves. But because I don't have that, I'm using 2 of mint and 2 of basil. I'm going to put those directly in my glass. And then if you had your peaches, you would use 1/4 of a peach. Put that in there. I'm going to use 3 little gooseberries. Those in there. And we're going to add lemon juice. So some people like to muddle the fruit and the herbs into the alcohol rather than the juice. I prefer to do the juice sometimes because on occasion, the alcohol will pull out some bitter notes because it's got that higher proof. So when it's the only thing that's in contact with the ingredients you're muddling, sometimes it can make them burn. So to avoid that, I'm just doing the citrus juice. So it's a 3/4 ounce of lemon juice, and this would be for the original recipe as well. So I'm gonna put that in there. And then I'm gonna get my muddler and give everything a light twist. If you have your peaches, you'd be muddling the peaches and the herbs. Do it a little bit, get them all crushed up in there. All right. And now for the rest of the delicious ingredients. So there is a tea syrup that I put on the prep list. I made it with traditional black tea. I was in this whole sweet tea, Southern Kentucky peach vibe. So it's a 1/2 ounce of tea. You could use absolutely a different tea to make your syrup. Sorry, it's a 1/2 ounce of tea syrup. But if you would like it to be like I am making it for the peach one, the original recipe, it is just a standard black tea. I used Louisiana. It's the brand that I keep at home. And then we're going to use 2 ounces of bourbon. Now, I know it doesn't look like the Woodford bottle, but I drank my Woodford bottle, and this is my travel Woodford. So we're using 2 ounces of the Woodford Kentucky Straight Bourbon. Not only because it is a sponsor of the Kentucky Derby, but because it is utterly delicious. So we have that. And then now we have to add ice. Now, I went to Sonic. I got my favorite kind of ice. So we're going to be using pebble ice. You can use crushed ice, would be perfect for this. You don't want to really use large format ice cubes. I'm going to put a ton of ice in here. I'm not going to fill it up all the way in. All right. So once all that ice is in there, I'm going to take this and just stir, 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 stir. This is giving it all the dilution it needs, helping all the ingredients come together. And then this is the way to make a mint julep as well. As you can tell, I am using the julep cup. This is a cocktail built in the glass. And then I'm going to end up topping it off with more ice. This is supposed to be a really refreshing, icy, cold drink for those hot summer days or oncoming summer days. Here in Texas, we are definitely starting to feel it. It was like almost 90 degrees today. But continue to ice that bad boy up. All right. Be extensive with it. If you have a straw, probably put the straw in before you add in all this crazy amount of ice. And then I'm going to garnish mine with an extra basil sprig that is oh so pretty, and a gooseberry. So if you were doing this with the peach and the Thai basil, it would be Thai basil sprig and then a slice of peach. You could grill it, you could slice it, you can do whatever you want. But that is the pseudo Maiden Race because it's not the actual Maiden Race. So this is going to be the picture on Instagram. However, I will later upload when peaches are in season a more appropriate photo of the actual recipe. I might rename this and just make 2 different recipes, guys. So imagine, if you will, Thai basil and peach, and that would be the Maiden Race. Cheers. Straws are totally necessary, by the way. It's really hard to drink past all this ice. Oh, so good. I just like the gooseberry mint basil thing. I think I'm gonna just keep both recipes. All right, and last but not least, we have blue blinkers. And this one was just kind of me horsing around, playing around with a bunch of ideas. And it is such a melting pot of concepts, but it is a beautiful cocktail. And it's one of those that, at the end of the day, if the cocktail's good, a lot of people don't even care about the backstory. But I get asked often how I come up with these cocktails or where I come up with these ideas or combinations. So, for those of you out there who care, blue blinkers, the name comes from blinkers, which are the things that they put on, or sorry, blue blinders. No, it's blinkers. I think it's blinkers. Blinkers. But it's a derby term. And then blue comes from Blue Moon, which is the official beer of the Kentucky Derby. So I wanted to do a shandy without it being a shandy because I thought that was too much beer. I didn't want that much beer in my cocktail. So then I was like, oh, I really like the brown derby cocktail. It's a great cocktail, very similar to whiskey sour, but it's made with grapefruit instead of lemon. And then I was like, oh, what if I did that and then combine a bunch of other ingredients and then add it into Blue Moon to make like a short shandy inspired by a brown derby and then just call it something different. So we're making a blue blinker. So you will need a cocktail shaker for this one. We're going to be using an ounce and a half of Woodford again, because I also thought it was just kind of fun to combine the 2 official sponsors, Woodford Reserve and Blue Moon. So we're going to use an ounce and a half of, again, the Kentucky Straight Bourbon. We're going to use 1 ounce of grapefruit juice. And I do recommend pink grapefruit, or if you can get it, ruby red. The white grapefruit juice is going to make it just a little too dry. However, if that's to your taste or your palate, then please feel free to experiment. So I also have a honey syrup. I'm going to use a 1/4 ounce of that. And then we're getting wild. We're doing a bunch of things, guys. Follow me along. We're going to use some orange marmalade. And this is kind of to taste, but it also depends on your brand. Because marmalade is the type of like jelly or preserve that the peels are left in it, so it has some bitter notes, which played really nicely with all of the ingredients that I'm adding to this cocktail. So I'm going to show you what I'm using. This is like a regular bar spoon, and the amount that I'm using is like so. Not like a whole lot, but it is a good amount. But it's definitely to taste. And some brands are going to be a little bit more bitter or more thick or set than others. So this one is Bon Maman. I've seen it in a lot of different states, so I'm pretty sure it's a countrywide brand. We're also going to be using 2 different bitters. We're going to be using 1 drop of grapefruit bitters. Boom. Then we're going to use 1 drop of orange bitters. Second boom. All right. So now that we have the bitters in there, let's recap real quick, shall we? Ounce and a half of the Woodford Reserve Kentucky Bourbon. And then we have a 1 ounce pour of grapefruit juice. We have a 1/4 ounce of the honey syrup, a bar spoon's worth of the orange marmalade. And then we have 1 drop each of grapefruit bitters and orange bitters. With all that in there, we're going to add some ice and make the shake. All right, so you can shake it for about 10 to 15 seconds as long as you're doing it vigorously. You do want to shake it pretty hard. You want to hear that ice break. That will help the marmalade really get incorporated into the cocktail. So I have this double rocks glass, which just means that it's a taller rocks glass. Regular rocks glasses are about yay tall. And I'm going to fill it with some ice. And then, tail ready. I'm going to strain the contents of this directly over the ice. I'm letting you know this might be my new favorite cocktail. Just putting it out there. Definitely give it a try. It is so delicious. I made this, and because you don't need a lot of the beer for the cocktail, you don't have any two choices. You can make more of the cocktail, or you can just drink the rest of the beer. Both of those are a win-win situation in my book. So you're going to use about 2 to 3 ounces of Blue Moon. I believe the sweet spot is 2.5 ounces, but it's going to depend on your glass. So if I fill this glass all the way to the top of ice, it only holds 2 extra ounces of the Blue Moon. So that's why I left it a little underneath the wash line, top it off, practice this. So now I know it's 3 ounces. But if you don't know, then definitely you can measure it out that way. When you're doing a recipe, you can tweak it to your palate and really be happy with the results. So with that set on there, we're going to garnish it. So I made these really interesting little garnishes. I got really bored yesterday, so I was in my kitchen making garnishes. So I have this piece of grapefruit flesh that I cut into this odd square shape that I find very attractive. And then I took the peel from the grapefruit and made candy grapefruit peel. But I like snacks, and I was like, oh, this is really nice. You have these bitter notes, you have these sweet notes, you have honey, which is like this richness to it. You also have all the wheat and spices from the ale or the Hefeweizen, like the Belgian white ale from Blue Moon. So I wanted to bring those out in different formats. So I have the fresh grapefruit, we have the grapefruit bitters, and then we have the candy peel, which gives like this kind of bubbly, jellied texture. So I boiled that in simple syrup or simmered it in simple syrup for about 10 minutes. And then I coated it with regular. So it's got a dual grapefruit garnish. That's lingers. I definitely recommend serving it with some kind of stir, like a cocktail stir, or even a straw, just because with not, you can sip it at the top and then all you're gonna get is beer, but then the cocktail will evolve as you're drinking. Or you could even pour the beer into the shaker so that when you pour it into the glass, it's already mixed all together. It's just personal preference. But this is my collection of post-derby beverages. I hope you guys make them and let me know what you think. Maybe we can reach out to the Kentucky Derby people and let them know, like, hey, these are equally as good, if not better. And then maybe upgrade our Kentucky Derby cocktails for next week, or not next week, next year. I'm going to just continue celebrating Derby weekend. That's what I'm thinking. But next weekend is Mother's Day. We'll be making pie-inspired cocktails. I believe I named the class Sweetest Pie. So make them with your mom, make them for your mom, make them think about your mom, and let's all make some pie-inspired cocktails. As a reminder, these classes stream live on the Facebook page. I upload them later to the YouTube channel of The Chef Choose. The recipes go up during the week on the Instagram account for @pandemic. And if you would ever like to ask your questions in real time and be in the Zoom room with me and some of the other people that I have in here, just reach out. It's $5 a month, and then you can use along all your questions in real time instead of messaging me later. But if you just want to be a creepy lurker out there on the interwebs, that's totally fine with me. I will take it either way. But thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I'm going to go and